Professor Hu Shiyun was a rising star. He was a respected scholar of ancient Chinese history at Kyoto University. His work earned him accolades internationally. Students flocked to his lectures, eager to learn. His research focused on the Han Dynasty. He often deciphered ancient texts and artifacts. His dedication was evident in everything he did. Professor Hu's passion was infectious. He inspired a new generation of scholars. His absence will be deeply felt. In August 2023, Professor Hu embarked on a research trip to China. He planned to visit archives and libraries in several cities. The trip was routine for him, a chance to uncover new material for his work. Professor Hu had traveled to China numerous times before without incident. He was eager to delve into the archives and uncover new insights. Professor Hu's itinerary included stops in Beijing, Xi'an, and Nanjing. He planned to spend several weeks in each city, immersing himself in his research. He was particularly excited to visit the Nanjing Museum, which housed a vast collection of artifacts from the Han Dynasty. Professor Hu had made arrangements to meet with local scholars and experts in his field. However, contact with Professor Hu ceased abruptly. His last communication was an email to a colleague on August 15th. He mentioned finding promising new documents in the Beijing archives. After that, silence. Days turned into weeks, and Professor Hu's family and colleagues grew increasingly worried. His disappearance sent shockwaves through the academic community. Where had he gone? What had happened? The lack of information was deeply unsettling. The mystery of Professor Hu's disappearance began to unfold. Kyoto University, where Professor Hu taught, was quick to respond. The university issued a public statement expressing concern for his well-being. They urged anyone with information about his whereabouts to come forward. University officials worked closely with Japanese authorities to try and locate him. They also reached out to their counterparts in China, seeking assistance. The university's efforts were met with silence. Chinese authorities remained tight-lipped about Professor Hu's case. Requests for information were met with delays or denials. The lack of cooperation fueled speculation and fear. Had Professor Hu run afoul of the Chinese government? Was his disappearance politically motivated? The silence from Chinese authorities was deafening. It raised serious questions about the safety of foreign scholars in China. The incident sent a chill through the international academic community. Many scholars began to reconsider their own research trips to China. The university's response, while commendable, was ultimately insufficient. Professor Hu remained missing, and the lack of information was agonizing for his family and colleagues. The case highlighted the challenges of ensuring the safety and security of academics working abroad, particularly in countries with restrictive political climates. Professor Hu's disappearance was not an isolated incident. In recent years, there had been a disturbing trend of scholars and academics going missing in China. Many of them had been critical of the Chinese government or had conducted research deemed sensitive by authorities. Their disappearances often followed a similar pattern: a sudden loss of contact, followed by silence from Chinese officials. One such case was that of Dr. Li Ning, an economist who had been critical of China's economic policies. Dr. Li disappeared in 2021 after attending a conference in Shanghai. Despite pleas from his family and international pressure, the Chinese government refused to provide any information about his whereabouts. His case, like Professor Hu's, remained unsolved. These disappearances had a chilling effect on academic freedom. Scholars became increasingly wary of conducting research in China, fearing for their safety. The Chinese government's actions sent a clear message: dissent would not be tolerated, even within the walls of academia. The international community condemned these disappearances. Human rights organizations called on the Chinese government to respect academic freedom and release those who had been detained. However, their pleas fell on deaf ears. The Chinese government continued to operate with impunity, silencing any voices that dared to challenge its authority. In January 2025, nearly 18 months after his disappearance, Professor Hu resurfaced. He was spotted at Narita International Airport in Tokyo. Japanese authorities confirmed his identity and reported that he appeared to be in good health. The news of his return sent a wave of relief through the academic community. However, Professor Hu's return was shrouded in mystery. He refused to speak to the media or answer questions about his disappearance. Kyoto University issued a statement saying that he was receiving medical attention and requested privacy. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance and return remained unknown. Professor Hu's silence only deepened the mystery. What had he experienced during his time away? Why was he unwilling to speak about it? The lack of answers was frustrating for those who had worried about him. Some speculated that Professor Hu had been warned not to speak. Had he been threatened? Was he trying to protect someone? Others wondered if he was suffering from trauma and needed time to heal. The truth, for now, remained elusive. The price of silence. Academic freedom in question. Professor Hu's case highlighted the precarious state of academic freedom in some parts of the world. His disappearance and subsequent silence raised serious questions about the risks scholars face when conducting research in countries with authoritarian regimes. The incident served as a stark reminder that the pursuit of knowledge could come at a high personal cost. The Chinese government's lack of transparency in Professor Hu's case was deeply troubling. It fueled speculation and eroded trust in the Chinese academic system. The incident had a chilling effect on international collaboration, as scholars became increasingly wary of engaging with Chinese institutions. The international community grappled with how to respond. Some argued for sanctions against China, while others called for dialogue and engagement. The debate highlighted the challenges of balancing academic freedom with political considerations. Professor Hu's case served as a wake-up call. It forced the academic world to confront the risks faced by scholars working in restrictive environments. It also underscored the need for greater international cooperation to protect academic freedom and ensure the safety of those who dare to push the boundaries of knowledge. Unanswered questions, the mystery remains. Despite Professor Hu's return, many questions remained unanswered. What had happened to him during his disappearance? Why had he remained silent about his ordeal? Was he a victim of political persecution or caught in a larger geopolitical game? Some experts believe that Professor Hu's research may have touched upon a sensitive topic, leading to his detention. Others speculated that he might have been mistaken for someone else, or caught up in a case of mistaken identity. The lack of information made it impossible to determine the truth. Professor Hu's silence only deepened the mystery. Some speculated that he had been warned not to speak, fearing repercussions for himself or his family. Others believed that he might be suffering from trauma and needed time to process his experience. The lack of answers was frustrating for those who had hoped for a resolution to the case. Professor Hu's disappearance and return served as a reminder of the complexities of international relations and the challenges of navigating sensitive political landscapes. Moving forward, the future for Professor Hu. Upon his return, Professor Hu remained largely out of the public eye. He returned to Kyoto University but kept a low profile. He declined interviews and avoided discussing his disappearance. It was clear that he was still processing the experience. The university respected his privacy, providing him with the space and support he needed. Colleagues and students were relieved to have him back, but understood the sensitivity of the situation. They offered their support while respecting his boundaries. Professor Hu's future in academia remained uncertain. Would he return to his research, or would the trauma of his experience make it too difficult? Would he ever feel safe enough to travel again, to pursue the knowledge that he was so passionate about? Only time would tell how Professor Hu's experience would shape his life and career. His story served as a reminder of the human cost of political tensions and the importance of protecting academic freedom. It also highlighted the resilience of the human spirit and the power of hope in the face of adversity. A global conversation protecting scholars worldwide. Professor Hu's case sparked a global conversation about the safety and security of academics working abroad. Universities and research institutions around the world began to re-evaluate their safety protocols for scholars traveling to countries with poor human rights records. The incident highlighted the need for greater international cooperation to protect academic freedom and ensure the safety of scholars. Governments and international organizations were urged to take a more proactive role in condemning the harassment and detention of academics. The academic community also recognized the need for greater solidarity and support for scholars facing persecution. Initiatives were launched to provide legal aid, financial assistance, and psychological support to academics at risk. Professor Hu's case served as a catalyst for change, prompting a long overdue conversation about the importance of protecting academic freedom and the safety of those who dedicate their lives to the pursuit of knowledge. It was a reminder that the freedom to think, research, and speak freely is a fundamental human right that must be protected at all costs.